Justin Baldoni's legal battle with Blake Lively just took a new turn. On June 9th, a federal judge dismissed his $400 million countersuit against his It Ends With Us co-star and her husband Ryan Reynolds, Access Hollywood confirms. Baldoni and his production company Wayfarer Studios sued Lively and Reynolds for defamation in January and sought at least $400 million in damages. According to documents obtained by Access, the judge also dismissed the director's libel lawsuit against the New York Times, in which he accuses the paper of working with Lively to smear him. The filing also states that Judge Louis J. Liman did note that Baldoni's legal team can amend the allegations relevant to the claims of interference with contract and breach of implied covenant by June 23rd. Following the decision, Blake spoke out, writing on her Instagram story, quote, "Last week, I stood proudly alongside 19 organizations uniting in defending women's rights to speak up for their safety. Like so many others, I've felt the pain of retaliatory lawsuits, including the manufactured shame that tries to break us. While the suit against me was defeated, so many don't have the resources to fight back. I'm more resolved than ever to continue to stand for every woman's rights to have a voice in protecting themselves, including their safety, their integrity, their dignity, and their story. There are protections out there. Check out some of the incredible organizations below for resources and information. With love and gratitude for the many who stood by me. Many of you I know, many of you I don't, but I will never stop appreciating or advocating for you." Blake's attorneys Esra Hudson and Mike Gottlied also said in a statement obtained by Access, quote, "Today's opinion is a total victory and a complete vindication for Blake Lively, along with those that Justin Baldoni and the Wayfarer parties dragged into their retaliatory lawsuit, including Ryan Reynolds, Leslie Sloan, and the New York Times. As we have said from day one, this $400 million lawsuit was a sham, and the court saw right through it. We look forward to the next round, which is seeking attorneys' fees, damages, and punitive damages against Baldoni, Sarowitz, Nathan, and the other Wayfarer parties who perpetrated this abusive litigation." Access has reached out to Baldoni's attorney for comment but did not immediately hear back. Shortly after the judge dismissed the case, Access chatted with trial attorney and legal analyst Misty about the major development in the cases that happened a few days ago, and how this affects the other legal drama between Baldoni and Lively.
Just a few days ago, a Daily Mail reporter came forward publicly and said that he had actually made a mistake when he used the phrase sexually assaulted in text messages, which were later used in Justin Baldoni's lawsuit. Now, these text messages were received by the parties through a subpoena and were a central part of Baldoni's case in order to prove defamation. Well, the reporter came out and not only publicly said that Blake Lively's publicist never used those words, sexually assaulted, but also submitted an affidavit to the court, which is something that the judge considered in the dismissal of the case. I was not surprised to see Justin Baldoni's complaint get dismissed in its entirety. The reason being his allegations of defamation directly related to claims that Blake Lively asserted in a court of law. She filed claims with a California administrative agency and then ultimately in a federal court. There's something called litigation privilege, meaning anything that Blake Lively raised in those legal documents and in those complaints cannot be the basis of a defamation case. So right from the very beginning, Justin Baldoni had a lot of issues legally, and from a strategic point of view, this case was very likely to get dismissed. In fact, it's likely why we saw so much coming out in the public sphere outside of the legal documents, because it's probably the case that his legal team knew the lawsuit itself was vulnerable to dismissal. It's not surprising to see Justin Baldoni's defamation claims be dismissed because it's incredibly difficult for any public figure to successfully raise defamation allegations in a lawsuit. It's a very, very high standard that requires what's called actual malice. And when it comes to public figures, that can be a really big hill to climb. And you often see these cases dismissed right from the very beginning, just like Baldoni's lawsuit. The reporter coming forward with this massive clarification about sexual assault versus sexual harassment is certainly significant. But in my view, it was likely that Baldoni's lawsuit would get dismissed regardless. And that's because of what's called litigation privilege. All of the allegations that he raised in support of his defamation case were what Blake Lively was actually pleading in her lawsuits. And that's simply off limits from a legal perspective. Anything that's in a federal court complaint or brought before a legal administrative agency cannot legally be brought forward as the basis for a defamation claim. So this case was likely over before it began, right when it was filed. Justin Baldoni's lawsuit against the New York Times was almost certain to fail right from the beginning. There are years and years of legal precedent that say the First Amendment is really expansive. And so reporting on what's filed with a court of law or anything that really is deemed to be of public interest is generally protected. In order for a public figure to be successful on a defamation case, they have to show what's called actual malice. It is a really difficult standard. So I'm not surprised to see that case dismissed in its entirety. The case against Blake Lively was a little bit of a different legal argument. Even still, his argument was largely based on her complaint that she filed in a federal court of law. And when you have a filed legal document, that is what's called litigation privilege. And those allegations cannot be used as the basis for a defamation lawsuit. So I wasn't surprised to see that lawsuit be dismissed as well. You're very likely to see Justin Baldoni appeal both of these dismissals because that gives him leverage. Remember, Blake Lively's case still continues on. That is going into litigation. And so he had countersuits where at some point they were going to be entitled to certain discovery, that his claims would also potentially have damages associated with them. Now that those cases are dismissed, that all goes away. So the Baldoni team is going to want to appeal these issues to see if they can get these cases back into the courtroom and use them to combat all of the allegations and all of the lawsuits that he faces from Team Lively. The dismissal of Baldoni's cases is a huge win for Blake Lively. Her case continues on. And now she's the plaintiff. She's going to be creating the legal path moving forward without Baldoni having leverage over the case because he's bringing his own lawsuit against her. This was a victory for Blake Lively's team. And that's why we're likely to see Baldoni try and appeal these decisions. So maybe he'll have some leverage as these cases move forward.